not a diagnosis. I'm not labeling anyone. I'm only careful analyzing the pattern and circumstances surrounding the crime case. In many family murder cases, nearly 4 out of 5 cases, the perpetrator either attempts or commits suicide afterwards, after the murder. This case, however, took a very different turn. Why? Because today we are going to see a family on social media. The Watts family look like a dream come true family, a smiling husband, a devoted wife, two young small childs, another baby oncoming. Anyone watching this or hearing the story or the videos might think that what's wrong? This is kind of family I want to live. Today we are going to talk about Watts family murder. Chris Watts, 33 at the time, Shannon Watts, 34, Bella 4, Celeste 3, and Shannon was 15 weeks pregnant at the time of this murder case. So, image versus reality in this case. What is the image and the reality? On screen, they look like a perfect American couple, perfect American family, but behind the camera, the reality was entirely different from your assumption. A distant husband, a highly performative wife in front of a camera, and a family drowning in the slowly poisonous financial debt for years. Financial pressure is the key fact in this case here. One critical detail often overlooked in this case is financial stress. In 2015, 3 years before the murder that happened, the Watts family was declared bankrupt by court. They carried debt around $70,000. This was not a temporary setback, but it was a long-term financial strain and instability that never fully recovered or resolved in this case, which helped to the murder too. Chris Watts, what people missed here? If you watch Shannon Watts' videos, Chris' behavior often appears was so silent, calm. Sometimes he laughed in front of the video, and sometimes he just showed up simply without speaking anything. There are no obvious signs or warnings that you got from that video. No visible aggression was shown from his side, like pathological shaming or avoidance, which raises the disturbing questions of all. What then happened? If nothing looked wrong, everything looked calm, what actually went wrong? We need to dig deep. So, the transition comes here where up until now, this point, the marriage before the murder looked strained but normal in front of camera, still functioning, very good. No one had any suspicion. Then just 5 weeks before the murder that happened, something shifted behind the camera. An affair began, and the replacement appeared. And the replacement's name is Nicole Kessinger. And this timeline, if you see, roughly 5 weeks before the murder, Chris Watts started an affair with his co-worker. By then, he was already distant from his wife, emotionally disengaged from his entire family, from his marriage life. And what's striking is how quickly the affair got escalated within just weeks, because now new life is fully available for him, waiting for him, so that he can go and live what he fantasized, right? And if you see the affair dynamics, they were in constant texting during that particular week periods, and emotional bonding was forming deeply. They were sharing outings to museums, trips, time alone they spent. Chris even wrote love letters to Nicole. He talked about a future with her. Record showed that the relationship had moved far beyond something uh, more than casual than you could imagine. What began as a slowly became as a fantasy became a reality for both of them who shared the fire. Three people, three directions. If you see the case, who where adults are involved. Shannon, she just became increasingly sad because confused and desperate to save the marriage because of her husband's distance. And Nicole was happy, more confident. She became hopeful about her future focused about her new life with Chris. And Chris became colder, distant with his wife, emotionally absent for his family, building silent resentment for years. Where along with the debt and the prior bankruptcy, he was into identity collapse mode for a shame avoidant men like this. One person was trying to save the relationship, and the another was building a future focused family fantasy. And the man who was involved was quietly detaching from both of them in this particular case, right? And one such important distinction, if you could see here, this is not a clinical diagnosis that you're making here, but many analysts and observers have noted that Chris displayed psychopathy associated traits such as, emotional detachment, calm under pressure, shallow affect, and unusual ability to compartmentalize extreme behavioral circumstances under pressure. These traits alone do not cause violence, but when combined with already having stress or infidelity and newly formed fantasy, the emotional withdrawal, they can become extremely dangerous to the people who are surrounding. Their murder became a final discord for this particular case after he found a new source of validation for his years of resentment. And morning of August 13, where the murder happened, early morning around 2 a.m., where the CCTV captured, Shannon returned from her business trip that morning to her home where her friend dropped her. Chris was already inside the house taking care of the children during that particular day. What happened next was never recorded in CCTV fully inside the house, but it was believed that there might have been some confrontations that possibly happened between those two adults about possible separations or their infidelity or divorce. The talks might have happened. What likely began as a conversation might have escalated into something more irreversible damage that caused the life of people. After four people, after the murder, the suicide claim. What Chris claimed after killing Shannon, Chris buried her body with her face down in the soil, backside fully exposed, with legs bent awkwardly, denoting, full deliberate humiliation on her and continued domination even after killing her. It's like resentment completely solved, then put her two daughters into a vehicle and disposed it in the oil tank, right? Reinforcing his power with, he might have felt an emotional high after doing all this. Later, Chris claimed that he thought about killing himself after killing all of them, but he didn't. And what his explanation was is, what if the site got exploded and harmed my co-workers? See, the man who says this is a man who murdered his entire family. Suddenly is so concerned about the society's safety and other co-workers safety. Many forensic psychologists in the note said that in certain family annihilation cases, in particularly in this case, often offenders don't panic because they are the escape annihilators. They organize early. That's where the calmness, the planning, they were forward looking. The behavior can appear when the individual believes that there is a life fully available for him, so that this problematic life can be resolved completely. And you see the behavior after the murder, what Chris did after, uh, is one of the most disturbing aspects of this particular case. What he did, after murdering, he listened to the music about killing the family and called his daughter's school to enroll her from the school, and texted a realtor about selling their house so that he can be finally out of debt, and messaged his mistress about future plans the same day after the murder. For the vacation details also he shared. Instead of panicking or remorsing, the mind moved into future. organizing the future plans, right? So it's not shock or relief, it's a relief, right? Why he appeared so calm and not even ounce of remorse there, because once his wife and children were gone for him, the conflict was fully gone, and the pressure for years was gone, the exposure of social media was gone, and the obligation of a father or a husband is gone. And so instead of breaking down, what he did, his nervous system relaxed. That calmness was not innocence, it was emotional detachment that happened long back, but once after execution it went into relaxation mode. And the police and media behavior, where the when Shanan's friend altered the police and the authorities, the day next, the Chris cooperated and calmly. He even spoke normally with the authorities. He followed all the instructions that they gave them, even gave an interview to the TV channel. But there you can note he was smiling and smirking, saying that he wanted his family to come back at home smirkingly. Later, he admitted something chilling inside the jail, that he giggled because he believed that police had accepted his form of false story. This was not fear, it was confidence, right? Who will behave like this? Only a person who's away from reality, far away. And this was not clever or an independent thinker. You can't say that, because he fully relied on other people for his own validation and identity. He struggled to function as an individual, independent adult would. When Chris realized that he was caught he was requested to talk to his dad inside the jail. Also important, he seems to be a person who avoids conflict at all cost. Even though he had uh, time to plan the crime, it was executed poorly, because what, he left a lot of evidences and made repeated mistakes, which is why the police might have caught him almost immediately, within 24 to 48 hours of his confession, right? He appeared to be the people pleaser before the murder, not out of kindness, but because he didn't know how to what to do without direction from an adult. He believed that killing his family would erase all his problems and give him a clean start. What kind of thinking, and who will think like this? This is deeply flawed thinking, right? No rational person would think that divorce is more difficult than murder, but he did that. Being divorced on absent father is not worse than spending life in prison, but he thought otherwise. It he believed something more unnatural. He chose the most extreme step, unrealistic, destructive step option, because he couldn't come to terms with real world consequences, right? This shows deep cowardice. A cowardice where his dependence and wrapped in the form of thinking, not the mind of an intelligent or careful planner who might get evaded from all this not so soon. Not a snap, but a delayed action in this particular case, because pain was delayed but not absent. He suppressed and complied and avoided and avoidant like an avoidant, and he is dissociated from reality for many years. That works until it doesn't work, right? When the pressure happens and the replacement appears like Nicole, and the shame happens, that convergence, like that collapse, is going to be very sudden in this case. This is called as identity rupture, not a snap, right? Which has been built for us, and not single cause, but only a stacking pressure. When you could see there was no single cause behind the tragedy, right? What mattered was the combination. He had emotionally been detached from his own family for us, and he had the escapism fantasy, and he had financial stress. What combo it will do? Like for a psychopath associated traits person operating together with this combination will turn a pressure into a catastrophe and a disaster. That's what Chris finally made. This escape driven family annihilator not all family annihilators will commit suicide, and this is the example of prime example. Some are escape driven like Chris. They don't see themselves as a problem. They see the family as a obstacle to their happiness, future happiness. The goal is not punishment or guilt to them. It's a new life, free, away from full responsibility, and he fits this pattern fully. He wants to live life without any responsibility, and fantasy override the reality at the end. And for months he was calculating, he was planning to get rid of his old life, where Sean was forcing him. He was resentful in that particular life. The affair, intensified it. That's it. In that internal world, wife became the problem, was forcing him to face the social media debt. Mistress became the reward, and the family stopped feeling human for him, and they became obstacles. Even the children, talking back felt like a shame or disrespect to him. That's why he removed all the obstacles like wife and the children. That is the only solution he believed. And this is not a normal way of thinking that any person would feel like. It's an escape driven, distorted way of thinking. And what is the final line that you can see from this all? This case was not about anger, it was about fantasy, overpowering on its own empathy, where with no empath person. And when there is no empathy, when the fantasy replaces the reality of this particular person, anything can be justified in that person's mind. A person like Chris, anything can be justified.